Evidence of slaughter? Amnesty International accuses a Rohingya rebel group of killing civilians. Is this the reason behind Myanmar's military crackdown? I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. Myanmar's security forces have long been accused of ethnic cleansing, but they may not be the only perpetrators of murder in the conflict. Amnesty International says they have evidence. The armed rebel Rohingya group known as ARSA killed around 100 Hindu civilians. One massacre last August is said to have taken place on the same day the group attacked 30 police posts and an army base. That was quickly followed by Myanmar's crackdown that forced 700,000 Rohingya civilians to flee into Bangladesh. ARSA has always denied they carried out the killings, and some Rohingya activists have questioned the motive behind Amnesty's report. But with mounting evidence, can they deny these allegations any longer? That debate in a moment, but first here's Sandra Gatman.
It was summer of 2017, and the world was gripped by the plight of hundreds of thousands of Rohingya refugees. Their stories of rape, arson, and murder at the hands of Myanmar's military led politicians to accuse its leaders of ethnic cleansing. But Myanmar's security forces said they were cracking down on a terror group called the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, also known as ARSA, which killed a dozen police officers that summer. Still, activists said Myanmar's crackdown was a smokescreen to justify a campaign of violence against a Muslim minority whose rights have long been denied. But for the first time, new findings by Amnesty International seem to back Myanmar's allegations that ARSA was behind the killing of nearly 100 Hindus, including the massacre of 45 men, women, and children whose bodies were discovered in a mass grave last year.
8 a.m. on the morning of the 25th of August, ARSA fighters surrounded a Hindu area of a village known as Kamongsak. They forced the men, women, and children to come out from their homes. They rounded them up, brought them together, and then they marched the men, women, and children off to the outskirts of the village. There they divided the men from the women, and then they killed execution style, first the men, and then the vast majority of the women and children as well. There are 8 women who survived on condition that they agreed to convert from Hinduism to Islam. We interviewed all 8 of those women, which in combination with forensic evidence and testimony from people from villages nearby is how we at Amnesty have now come to the conclusion that ARSA is responsible for this massacre.
Myanmar's government has painted ARSA as an Islamic terror group affiliated with transnational networks like Al-Qaeda. But experts say the group is poorly equipped. It has guns, small homemade bombs, and what it describes as a narrow mission to protect Rohingya Muslims. But some are concerned that ARSA could expand and strike again. Inside Bangladesh's sprawling refugee camps, young Rohingya men are seen as easy to recruit.
We will shed as much blood as needed to free our country. That's our motherland. We are citizens of that country. How can we stay here?
But ARSA has denied it's targeting Hindus, saying in a statement that it acts to protect the Rohingya community and that any defensive attacks have always been aimed only at the Burmese terrorist military junta. Rohingya activists say Amnesty's report could have been influenced by Myanmar's government and that it's weakened a global effort to hold the country's leaders accountable. But Amnesty International says it stands by its findings.
It doesn't justify in any way the government's massive response that drove out nearly 700,000 Rohingya. It doesn't excuse it at all, but it does put another layer of complexity into the violence over the past year.
The difficulty remains in gaining access to Myanmar's northern Rakhine state, where all ethnic and religious crimes have yet to be independently investigated and brought to justice. Sandra Gatman, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined here in the studio by Maung Sani. He's a coordinator of the Free Rohingya Coalition. In Geneva, we have Tirana Hassan. She's Amnesty International's Crisis Response Director and head of the unit that produced the report. And completing our panel from Yangon is Nyo Aung Mint. He's a former member of Myanmar's ruling National League for Democracy and a former spokesman for Aung San Suu Kyi. I thank you all for joining us on the Newsmakers. Maung Sani, this report from Amnesty International. ARSA abducted and massacred almost 100 Hindus, civilians, men, women, children. It's a comprehensive report. It's based on exhaustive interviews. You'd accept it's ugly, but it's the reality, right?
No, I don't accept it for a number of reasons. I'm not denying that Amnesty should not be being impartial or publishing human rights abuses, publishing about human rights abuses committed by any combatant or armed gangs.
So what's your problem with it?
My problem with this, Amnesty has gone far beyond what the evidence has warranted. There are major gaping holes in the Amnesty's report, and the evidence, the oral testimonies provided by the Hindu witnesses or survivors, they are conflicting, they are evolving. Amnesty itself admitted it, and also the person, actually Major General Aung Ye Win, who led the Burmese journalists back in September when the mass grave was unearthed, is an old acquaintance of mine. He had absolutely no evidence when he was confronted in Burmese language by the Burmese the reporter. General, what is your evidence that ARSA killed these people?
Okay.
He had nothing to say.
Okay, we have Amnesty on this panel. I'm glad that we do. Tirana Hassan, we have Maung hanging a question mark over your methodology. He feels some people have pulled a fast one on Amnesty International and you might not have the full story. Tell me your response to that.
Well, we think very carefully before producing any of our research, and we actually apply the same methodology, the same sort of rigor, the same sort of detailed analysis into the abuses that have taken place and that are documented in this report that we have to the other 17 plus reports and press releases that we have released since August, which have documented both this most recent abuse, most recent incident, which took place back on the 25th of August, but it has taken us that long to be able to gather all of the evidence for us to produce this public report. That said, however, the same sort of methodology, including eyewitnesses, triangulating information from multiple witnesses, not just the victims themselves, looking at photographs and forensic evidence and having independent analysis of that sort of evidence is all part of the process that we use to triangulate evidence. And it is from that basis that we were able to draw the conclusion that the individuals from the Hindu community were killed in a brutal attack by a Rohingya armed group known as ARSA, and that this actually was not only about the killings, but it was also about abduction. And what Amnesty is calling for is that it is now the time to look at the fact that it is clear, based on this investigation, based on our other previous investigations, which have meticulously documented abuses by the Myanmar security forces against the Rohingya population, that there must be access to Northern Rakhine State. That is the only way that we will be able to collate all of the forensic information as well as do detailed analysis. And it's not just Amnesty's access, it's the UN's access.
That's a good point, and we're going to address it in a moment. I'm going to get Maung's response in a moment, but let me go to Nyo Aung Mint for now. Nyo Aung Mint, do you concur with Amnesty International's report and their findings that ARSA did these terrible things to those Hindu civilians?
Yeah, of course, I totally agree with her because we already have a lot of evidence, and that's a massacre. That's the women, children, elders being it's the victim. It was a crime versus intent because in Dan village when military and then the authority killed the Dan Rohingyas, by that's an extrajudiciary killing, and then but they're also put on the on the court and the justice and they've been charged with the different charges, and then they are sentenced. And then right now, we have evidence that the Hindu, they have nothing to do with any Rohingyas. They are not the supporter of the government. Because why? I'm really worried that the killing was not a murder, not a crime. It was like it's a mass.
Okay, so
killing.
let me ask you, sir, if you'll allow me to come in here, you agree with Amnesty's methodology and what they have uncovered here. Amnesty International also says, on Mint, that what Myanmar is doing to the Rohingya people is, quote, a crime against humanity, or are crimes against humanity. So, if you agree with them on this incident, do you agree with them on the other incidents?
Yeah, I think we should, because the government should have independent investigation. That's the government made a mistake. And then when an independent body, when they look at it, what really happened on the ground. But still, the Rohingya community have only 10 bodies to be claimed.
Hold on.
Compare with the
Sorry, I need clarity from you, sir, if you don't mind. Crimes against humanity. Sure. Amnesty says 99 Hindus were killed by ARSA, who claim to represent the Rohingya. They're a militant group among the Rohingya, right? You say that was legitimate and the report was fine. Amnesty also says what the security forces are doing to the Rohingya people are crimes against humanity. Do you accept that as well?
I'm a little bit afraid of that, the second part, because the government should have to put in all the evidence to show that they are innocent. And then
But sir, why is Amnesty credible when it comes to the other side's crimes and not to your side's crimes?
No. I mean, whoever committed a crime should be charged with the international standard. There was no, the double standard. I don't mean that it was a double standard. It should have, whoever committed the crime should be, investigated, should be exposed.
So let me ask you, Maung Sani, same question then. How come you weren't flagging up Amnesty's reports up until this moment as well? Why did you not have problems with their methodology until they turned the focus on ARSA?
Well, I only look at the report on its own merit. Yeah, the fact that Amnesty International has issued 17 press releases and written reports in the past and applied rigorous methodology does not necessarily guarantee that this report will be of the standard of the same standard. If this report is submitted to a judicial review or in a court of law, this report will be thrown out of jail because there are gaping holes. There are 6 points that Amnesty raised, saying that that provided them a solid basis for incontrovertible, conclusive evidence.
But Tirana is saying they use the same methodology throughout because you're not allowed to go and have proper access there. So they're using similar methodology throughout their reporting.
This is the region in the Rakhine State, extremely restricted. The Sittwe, the capital of Rakhine State, no foreigners can enter without intelligence notice. And this is the region that UN Special Rapporteur is not allowed to go in. UN fact-finding mission is not allowed to go in. Amnesty was there doing research for almost a month, including talking to a village administrator, which is part of the government. So why did the Burmese government allow the Amnesty in while it blocks UN and other fact-finding mission?
We'll get Nyon Min to respond to that in a moment. But let me ask you, Tirana, I guess one of the things, I don't want to speak for you, Maung, but one of the things that Maung doesn't like here is the issue of proportionality here. So overall, arguably, as some among the UN have called it, genocide is taking place. Maung, and I read your op-ed recently, Maung, you feel it distracts from, when Amnesty reports on what ARSA does, it distracts from a bigger crime that is taking place. What's your take on that, Tirana?
Well, first of all, let me just offer up a few points of clarification. The Amnesty team was not in Rakhine State for 1 month. It was there for a period of just a few days. When we talk about access for the UN fact-finding mission and for the special rapporteur on Myanmar, it's actually access to the country as a whole which is restricted to them, not just Rakhine State. But Amnesty did not have access to northern Rakhine State, which is the area where most of the abuses have actually taken place since August 2017. We did not actually have any sort of official contact or permission with the central authorities, or as some of the public assertions have been made by the Ministry of Defence.
Sorry, wait a minute.
No, I'll just finish.
You were talking to a village administrator.
We did have possibilities to actually. Thank you. So actually what happened was that Amnesty was able to get into Sitwe, where we had permission from the local authority to actually conduct our work there, actually to be there. We were able to use independent local contact with no connection to the military, the government, or the authorities. We, as we have always done, worked with independent translators. All of our interviews, as we always do, are conducted one-on-one with no interference, with independent translators, with no other individuals, either from the government, the authorities, or the community. And the only thing that we did have was just permission from the local authorities only to be in Sitwe. But any sort of assertion that Amnesty International colluded with the Myanmar authorities is frankly just really inappropriate and quite absurd. And it's the same sort of accusations that we've heard from people saying that our reports on abuses against the Rohingya population have been totally manipulated by members of the Rohingya population. That is also untrue. It's part of the human rights violators playbook, shoot the messenger.
No, I'm not shooting the messengers. I'm shooting at the extremely shoddy quality of your report. Your report, look, you repeated the completely unverified, the Burmese military's narrative that on August 25th, ARSA coordinated attacks on 30 different security outposts, and that has not been independently verified. ICG reproduced, which you quoted as a source, reproduced the Burmese government's narrative. Coordinated attack on 30 different security forces by a group of angry, largely illiterate people, the Rohingyas, is actually beyond imagination. Unbelievable. This is the kind of thing like Israeli intelligence might be able to pull it off.
Okay.
Not ARSA.
Okay,
I think repeating the official narrative and
let's
saying
get
this is like exonerating the Burmese military.
Tirana, the claim from Maung is that you're just repeating what the Burmese military tells you. Is that even possible?
No, absolutely not.
Without direct collusion.
No, Amnesty International doesn't tend to parrot anybody. We are an independent human rights organization. We come to these conclusions based on rigorous research that we've conducted. We have actually reached out to ARSA prior to the release of this report to ask them for their comment. Unfortunately, they did not respond. We would hope that they would choose to respond to directly to several questions that we have for them, which we would be happy to publish in our future publications. I think what's important here is that from the evidence obtained from Amnesty International through a rigorous investigation, what we can say is ARSA was responsible for the unlawful killings and abductions of this particular group of people. This was an incredibly violent campaign, which started on the 25th. Majority of the abuses clearly have impacted on the Rohingya community, without a doubt. However, it is important that we move forward and look at justice and accountability. There needs to be an ICC referral.
Hold on,
there needs to be independent investigations.
Okay. I want to bring in your own mint here and ask about whether innocent Rohingya people are being scapegoated for the actions of ARSA, because this is tremendously convenient for Myanmar, isn't it? People people in Myanmar, especially this government, doesn't like the Rohingya people, doesn't want to give them citizenship. You yourself, on this program, in the past, you've said they shouldn't be given citizenship, right? You don't want to give them citizenship. You don't want them in your country. Well, hold on. Hold on. Let me finish the question. Hold on, let me finish the question. So, isn't this tremendously convenient that when ARSA, this small militant group, as egregious as their actions might be, are giving your government the perfect pretext to absolutely crush the Rohingya people and ethnically cleanse them from the country, sending them across the border to Bangladesh? Isn't that the reality?
Actually, the government didn't push it out. And then after 30, when Mangsani mentioned about the 30 police, outposts have been attacked by the very violent, the group. Because between 2016 and 2017, 40 village headmen who were Muslims were being killed by the militant groups. So this is what happened. This is like kind of trying to logic between the connecting between, because of the small group create the problem, making a big Rohingya being crushed. It was absolutely not.
Let me ask you, Mangsani, why does it have to be all or nothing? Why can't it be that, yes, there's a tremendous, horrendous crime against humanity being committed against the Rohingya people? The overwhelming vast majority, completely innocent of any crime, they're being pushed and pummeled and humiliated on a daily basis, pushed out of their homeland into Cox's Bazar and other parts of Bangladesh and so forth. And among the community, as Auden said, those to whom evil is done do evil in return. Among the community, some have taken up arms and are doing terrible things against security forces and other innocent civilians. Why can't it be the case? Why does it have to be all or nothing? Why do we have to deny the fact that ARSA are doing some horrible things?
No. Let me just be categorically clear. I am not here to defend or deny what ARSA might or might have done. If they have done that, they also committed crimes against humanity. The ARSA should be brought to ICC, just as the Burmese generals and Aung San Suu Kyi and the accomplice should face a trial. But what I'm trying to do is point out the fact that Amnesty International has done an extremely unprofessional job as a researcher. I've been a researcher for 30 years, and I've studied the Burmese military, worked with some of the generals a number of times when I was pushing for ending of isolation of my country. I came from a military family. The military allowed the Amnesty International to come in, and military, in my view, even coach the evidences. There are questions the Amnesty are unable to answer. Who provided the eyewitnesses? Amnesty, say that the Hindu Rohingyas, when they were interviewed in Bangladesh, they say the killings were done by the Burmese military and Rakhine Buddhists. And then Amnesty say, well, that was under duress because they were living with the ex-perpetrators. Now, these are the people that were repatriated, Hindus, back to Burma. Why not apply the same logic?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
it doesn't check out for you.
It's like you're having a double standard in terms of, so it's not rigorous, and most importantly, Amnesty has just deepened anti-Muslim, hatred and fear, not just in Burma, in Modi's
maybe
India.
ARSA has done that. Maybe ARSA is the one who's deepened anti-Muslim fear by claiming to act on behalf of the Rohingya and going and torturing people and butchering them.
Yeah,
ARSA's done it, not Amnesty International.
ARSA does not speak for the Rohingya. It's a small bunch of people.
Sure, but they can still commit crimes, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And Amnesty can report on them.
I don't deny that. But what I'm saying here is that the evidence that Amnesty has produced will be thrown out of any court of law because the evidence is extremely underwhelming.
Okay. Well, we've got the response from Tirana, and unfortunately we are out of time. I'd love to continue this conversation, but I cannot. I have to move on. Mangsani, Nyo Ong Mint, and Tirana Hassan, I thank you all sincerely for joining us here on the Newsmakers.